there's Ann. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, Ann.
Glad
Listen,
to be here.
for the record, what's your full name?
My full name is Annie Mae Boone Joy St. Binford. My full name.
And Annie Mae was given to you by?
My father.
Uh-huh. Was there a significance for that name in the family?
I was named after two of his sisters. His oldest sister had passed away, and then a middle sister. So my first name was after his older sister, and my middle name was his middle sister.
Nice.
Right.
And did you have a nickname growing up?
Yes, I did, and I try to keep that a little secret, but
Okay.
I think I can share it with you. It was baby sister. My mother thought that I would be the last child, but there were four younger, four.
Right. Surprise.
A surprise. So baby sister, and I had a brother named baby brother. So, and that's what they called me all those years. Yes.
Now, what's your present family situation? I've met Bobby, but tell me about Bobby. Tell me what your present.
In terms of my
your
biological
family situation. Are you living? Is it just your husband and yourself? Are you living with? Do your children live with you?
I have. Well, I don't have children biologically,
Okay.
but I do have a stepdaughter who has a son, who is a grandson, and there are no step grandchildren. He's just a grandchild. And I have two new daughters, adopted daughters, that were students of mine here in Brentwood. As a matter of fact, at the end of last year, they came to me and asked if they could live with me because they had no place to go. So I said, my husband, it was so funny that my husband and I, the last day of school, left home around 9, stopped to have breakfast because I didn't have to be in school until 10. So as we were sitting, I said to him, I'm retiring next year, and what am I going to do with my time? And in doing my time, I said to him, I know, I'll take a couple of babies. So then I said to him, well, I don't want to change any diapers. I don't want any 5-year-olds and 15-year-olds, etc. So I said, let's forget it, and let's forget about it. Well, when I went to school and I'm sitting and doing my, cleaning out my room, getting ready for the end of the year, a little girl knocked on the door and told me that she had a story to tell me. And I said, sure, come in. Well, I knew she was a foster child, and she has a sister, also a foster child. And as she spoke, she told me she was going to college, and she was now 18, so therefore she didn't have a place to stay. And she wondered if she could come and live with me. So I didn't even have to ask my husband because we had already talked about it. And he had already agreed that we could take a couple of babies. Well, these were my babies. So they're with me now. They are in college. One is in Albany University and the other one's in Binghamton University. So they're with us during the summer, mostly vacation time. So my family is growing,
That's wonderful.
Yes, I thought it was. So I've taken a little of Brentwood with me.
And these were students of
They were students of mine since 10th grade. And they were in 10th, 11th, and 12th grades with me. And at the end of the 12th year, they knew I was leaving, so they wanted to leave with me. And that's my family here, But most of my family, is in Virginia. My mother's in Virginia, and all of my sisters and brothers are there. So now I'm really the only one that's in this area. But so my family has grown here also.
I would say what a wonderful statement to make about you and the impact that you've had on their lives.
Thank you.
And will still have on them.
Right. Thank you. Yes.
Now, do you see your family in Virginia very often?
Quite often.
Do you?
We travel usually at least twice, sometimes 2-3 times a year, especially Christmas, vacation, Mother's Day. We try to go home because Dad is gone, but Mom is still here. So we try to go, and visit with her as often as we can. Yes.
Where were you born? And if you don't mind my asking,
oh, no, not at all.
Where were you born?
I was born in Nansemond County, Virginia, which is now known as the city of Suffolk, Virginia. And ironically, I would leave the city of Suffolk to move to Suffolk County. Right. So that's where I was born. We were 9 children, mother and father. Daddy died in 1982. And mom is still there. She's 83 years old. So we try to get to see her as often as possible. But I grew up in a very small town, a very, humble beginning, very poor beginning. But as I tell people, we were poor in terms of materials, but we had a lot of love for each other. So we really didn't, I didn't really find out that I was poor until I went to college. And when I saw the kids with different things, and I know that we did not have those things. And so that was really, the only way.
What are some of the earliest childhood memories that you can share with us? Yeah.
Oh, I think going to school. I listened to the kids complain about school, but when I went to grammar school, I went to a one-room school. I think there were 4 classes, 1st through 4th grades. I remember my teacher, Mrs. Elliott, and in this little 4-room, one-room building. And walking to school, I think all of us, I guess, maybe about 3 miles to get to, a grammar school. And then from grammar school, we went to, elementary school, 4 years there. But we did take a bus, to school. So my earliest memory, I think, would be of school age.
That was very rural, too.
Very rural.
Can you describe for us what that one-room schoolhouse looked like, or the?
Oh, it was just a pillbox, really, and I guess all of my sisters and brothers were there. There were 4 older than me. There were 4 classes in the building. 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. We didn't have kindergarten. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I had a brother in 4th, a sister in 3rd, a brother in 2nd, and I was in 1st. So as they graduated or moved on, another one would move in from the family. So the teacher was very warm and friendly. She was more of a mother figure. I do remember that. Mm-hmm. In this building, we had a potbelly stove in the corner. She could usually for us for lunch, she would cook a big pot of soup or beans for the kids. We were to bring a dime and a bowl and a slice of bread if we had bread at home. And that would be lunch for us. And that I guess was the greatest thing because it gave us a sense of belonging, a sense of family within the school,
Now, did the school district draw from a great distance, or was it just a local?
I think it was more of a local community type school. Although the funding, of course, came from taxes, and I guess the main building or administrative building was quite a ways from the community.
Did you maintain friendships with any of the people that you went to school with at that time?
Yes. I have a number of friends that are, many of them are still there in the community. So when I visit home, when I do go home, I see many of them, around. They are now the teachers and some of the doctors, and they are busy, in the community.
Now, what years would this have been that we're
this
talking about?
In the 50s the 50s, late 50s, early. And I'd say because I graduated from high school in 62. So
when were you born?
44.
Okay, so you were born right in the midst of, but near the end of World War II.
Right. So
do you have any memories of that as a very young child? Because you would have been 3 or 4 years old after the war already.
Right. The only memory I have of that in 43, when I was born in 44, I do remember my father not working. And I remember him going to the fields, what we call the field, working in the field, picking beans, and they would take us with them. He and my mother, and picking vegetables, at 50 cents a basket, and that was how we made a living. But again, we thought it was just a part of life, so we really didn't pay any. Put any significance to it.
So this is what your father did. I mean, this was his work. Primarily.
Right, my mother and father.
Your mother and father both.
Right,
okay.
And then he was he later applied for a job in the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And I think that was during the time of Reconstruction or after the World War.
Yes.
And he was able to get the job there. And he was there until he retired. And I think he was there for about 31 years. And when he retired, that.
Do you, Annie, do you have any knowledge of mother or father's family history, of your own history back through the generations?
Not really. My father, I do know his mother died when he was 2 years old. But after that time, he set out to find his family. And he was able to find a sister, I think his mother's sister, an aunt. And there were several aunts and uncles that he located. We visited. And then we found out his grandparents. But of course, from there,
Yes.
it sort of got difficult to find. Now, my father was born, I believe, in Philadelphia. So his roots were northern, roots.
Yes.
But my mother, her roots were, in the South, North Carolina, South Carolina, in that area.
Did you know your mother's parents?
No, as a matter of fact, my mother's mother died too when she was a month old. And her grandmother raised her. And by the time I came along, her grandmother was gone. But we lived in an area where we lived on a block. I'd say maybe 5 houses on the block, but they were all related. My uncle next door, and after that, another aunt. So they were all related to my mother, and that's how we grew up. We had, in each household, there were at least 7 to 10 children. And we grew up, we grew up with friends. I had 2 friends, cousins, and that grew up with me. My oldest sister, 2 friends, my brother it was so funny that each house would have a boy at the same time, a girl at the same time, or a few months, here and there. And that's how we grew up. As a matter of fact, I came to New York with my 2 cousins. They came to New York at the same time. One ended up in Rochester and one ended up in the city. So we've grown up.
Sounds like you had a wonderful childhood.
Oh, I did. I really believe I did.
of it.
Yes, I did. I had a beautiful childhood. And it was very hard for me when I came here to find out that the kids didn't have the same, type of history. Really, it was very, very hard for me to, adjust to, because many things they would tell me, I would say, no, that can't be, because, your mom and dad wouldn't allow that, but it would happen. It would happen.
What did your mom enjoy doing? What gave her the greatest pleasure?
I think Mom loved cooking more than anything else, and church. I think it was cooking and church. My father was more of the dominant figure in the household because we were all biblical students, more or less, Sunday school, church, and sometimes we were in church all day long. But Daddy, when there was a problem, Mama would say, wait until your dad gets home. And that was all she had to say. But Mom took pride in her cooking, her rolls, and her children. I think greater in her children.
Do you enjoy cooking today?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I do it because I have to. And I was fortunate in marriage because my husband loves to cook. And so he does a lot of the cooking. Really.
You mentioned that you were in the middle of a rather large family.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about some of your brothers and sisters and what they're doing or what happened to them.
Right. Well, there were, as I said, 9 of us. I was the 5th child and the first one to finish college, the first one to graduate college. My oldest brother was in college, but then he was drafted into the military. My oldest sister was in college. She stopped to get married. Then she went back. My oldest brother went back. So they've all graduated now from college. I think the last 2, the youngest one, my little youngest sister and my youngest brother, they are still trying to finish college, but they have families but they're doing well. My oldest brother was an electrician. My oldest sister, a graduate nurse, a registered nurse. She taught nursing. My next brother was in the Air Force, but he was in the Vietnam, era.
Yes.
And he came out of the military with a mental problem. So he died in 1990 from complications from that war. Then my next sister in data processing. Then I have a sister that teaches in Maryland. I have a brother that works for the government. He's in nuclear physics or nuclear energy. And my youngest sister, she's married with babies. She has 6 little girls and little boys, so she doesn't have time for school right now.
Yes.
And my baby brother, he works. He's in management, so he's doing well.
Everybody making a significant contribution someplace.
Exactly, someplace. And that was one of the joys of my father. Daddy said that you have to do something. He didn't care what, but you had to do something, and you could live off someone. But he did want us to know that when one didn't have and the other one did, then we do both, have.
Annie, were there any other adult influences other than your parents in the early years of your development that do you think had a great impact on your life?
Yes, I think my Sunday school teachers, because that was something that we did religiously, not because we had to, but because it was a part of our existence there. So many of my Sunday school teachers over the years, I remember the things that they taught us, the things do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Yes. And these things were reinforced in the home.
The values.
Values, yes, I believe so. And I go back occasionally and I do visit some of those people from my church. And as a matter of fact, I was speaking with one recently when she lost her husband, and I was there. And as we talked, she said, I don't know if anything I've done has mattered to people and to the children. And I said, oh, yes, it matters a great deal. Because of you, I have taken some of my values up north, into certain situations, because I'm in my church and I'm here. And with the kids here in school, they too notice those values, those things. And you don't have to preach to them, but you do live the things that you're taught. And these things I give credit to the teachers from my Sunday school or from the church.
Who influenced your decision to go into teaching or education?
I think, in high school, I had a teacher that I admired greatly. She was a business teacher, very stern, a woman, Mrs. Spencer. And I looked up to her when I took typing, and I said, I want to be like that lady. She didn't smile much, but I just knew it was something about her that I liked, and I wanted to be like this lady, Mrs. Spencer. And
so she was a role model.
She was a role model. Yes, she was a role model.
Was there a particular moment when that decision was made, do you think, that I'm going to pursue education or I'm going to... Do you remember an incident associated with it or a moment?
I do. When I took typing, the class was full. I mean, there were so many people in the class. She walks in and she says, get over there. You sit over there and you do this. But she was I thought she was angry with the world. And eventually the class got smaller. So when the class reached maybe the number of students for each machine or the number of typewriters or whatever, she made a complete turn. She was the sweetest, the nice. She says, well, I had to do that until my class was down to where I wanted it. And I remembered. And she was so friendly, and she was such a nice teacher after that. And I remember that to this day. Yes, I do remember.
Tell me, Annie, some of the, you have your roots in Virginia and up through, I guess, the 4th grade, maybe or was it the 8th grade, you lived in the same place. Did you move after that, or was it much after that? No,
as a matter of fact, I moved only after I graduated from college.
Okay.
And I was at home with my parents until I finished college. I worked at the college for about a year, and then a girlfriend of mine said she heard of jobs up north. I finished an education, but couldn't find the job I wanted in business.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college I went to Norfolk Division of Virginia State College, which is now known as Norfolk State University. But I went to college there, graduated in 69, worked for a while. Well, graduated in the early part of 69. With
a baccalaureate?
Right, yes. And but a friend of mine said she had heard of positions up north. We had flyers that said in Lindenhurst, I think it was, that there were openings. So we came up for interviews, but the jobs had been taken when we arrived. Yeah. And I had a sister living here in Brentwood at the time. So we both came out, lived with her for about a couple of months. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend we found a job. We went to Nassau County looking for work. And we found that there were 2 jobs in Brentwood. When we arrived in Brentwood, she was interviewed, then I was interviewed. She got the job. Someone else had interviewed earlier and received the job. So I was left out. And I told my sister, I'm going home. I'm going back to Virginia. But she convinced me to stay because she needed company. That's what it was. Uh-huh. So I ended up staying. And I said, well, I'll apply for some other kind of job. And I tried, and I finally applied in Wyandanch. But I applied only as a secretary, but not as a teacher. And when I did apply, I was to be hired. And what was it? The person that interviewed me went away for the weekend. And he didn't let me know that I had gotten the job. He told the secretary he wanted to wait a couple of days. He would call me on Tuesday. Well, Monday, the contract came from Brentwood, and I signed it. And I've been here since. That was it. He called me Tuesday to tell me that I had gotten the job, and I told him thanks very much, but no thanks, because I had signed a contract with Brentwood, and I've been here since and have enjoyed it.
That was 1970?
That was 1969.
It was 69.
It was September 69, August, September.
Right. Do you remember your first paying job?
Yes, I do. It was in 1965, as a matter of fact. I came to New York from Virginia as a live-in maid. Mm-hmm. And this was in Westchester, New York. Knew nothing about the city, knew nothing about New York, period. But in 1965, we met these people who had an employment agency in Virginia, who put us in touch with an agency up here. And we went to work, the 3 girls, 3 friends, 2 cousins of mine. Mm-hmm. We went to work in Westchester as housekeepers, maids. Mm-hmm. And after 2 weeks, I was there. The little girl, there were 3 I'll never forget them, 3 little girls. And I think they became very comfortable with me after 2 weeks. And one day, one called me a maid, and that was it. I said, I'm going back to school. I'm not a maid. And I said to him, I don't know. What did I think I was with them? I thought I was part of their family, I guess. Yes. So I said, no, I'm going back to school. Uh-huh. And I left and went back to Virginia. And, well, I came first out to Long Island. Then I worked as a switchboard operator for about a month. And after that, this was in August. And I went back to Virginia to finish my college education. So I had 2 more years of school there. And I said it worked out well because once I started working and collecting a paycheck, it was very hard to go back to school. And because I worked here and it didn't work out that well as a switchboard operator, it was, I guess, the opportunity that I needed or the push that I needed to go back to college and to finish my college education.
At that time of your life, what were the kinds of things that you were interested in? What did you enjoy doing? Did you read, or were you...
Yes, I did. I loved reading. And my father was one who pushed, studies, reading. We didn't have TV until later in life. We didn't even have electricity until later. So much of our information came through the newspapers or reading or just talking with each other. And we were a very close-knit family. But I think reading was probably...
response reminds me that you have lived during some very historic times in this country's history, as
Right.
well as in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the historical events that you were immersed in because you simply were living at the time that you
Right.
remember and can comment on?
I think during, well, not such pleasant history.
Exactly, right.
During the, I guess the Klan rallies, I remember them. I remember the cross burnings, the sit-ins, the demonstrations, the civil rights movement, right? Being a part of it, doing some of the sit-ins that my father didn't know about because he would have been upset. But from my college years, but I do remember hearing or reading about the cross burnings, you know, in certain neighborhoods or certain areas.
Did that come close to where you were at the time?
Not really, because my community was a little community set off by itself, and it was predominantly a black, of course, it was a black community. And we were strong in faith. The men were very protective. I hear a lot about families without fathers. That was not true in my area. There was a father in every house on my block. And, but I think they protected us from a great deal that went on, things that we could have been involved in. When we went to the theater, Daddy took us, or one of the daddies on the block would take us. If we went to affairs, movie or plays or whatever, it was done with the church. So we went as a group. All of our extracurricular activities were done through and by the church. So I think much of what went on, we were protected
a different
against.
Sense of security for children
yes,
than there is today.
Now. Yeah. Exactly. So I think too, and my father's history being a product of an interracial, history, we were not allowed to.
Would you explain that for me a minute?
Oh, well, I'd say, his grandmother was white.
I see.
His grandmother, my great-grandmother. So that meant he was a product of, and he was a very fair-skinned man. But in my house, we were not allowed to use profanity. We were not allowed to use any racial, names toward any group of people. I don't care where the people came from. And he said, because if you talk about the white, you're talking about my ancestors. And if you talk about black, you're talking about all of us, because his father was black. And he had Indian in him as well. My mother had Indian blood or Indian ancestry. And, but she was more of the African, black. But my father's history was quite varied. So he wouldn't allow us to talk about any of those things within our household. And and my mother would always say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, right? And so we try to live with that.
A question about Annie for a moment. Are you a night person or a morning person?
I am a night person, I think. I can't get, that was one of the reasons I think for school was so hard for me to get up in the morning, but I could stay up late, do what I have to do. But so I'd say I'm a night person. Now
that you decided to make your life up north here, you must enjoy the seasons, and I would imagine that you have a feeling about either a favorite season or not. What is it? Do you really fall? Fall. Yeah, fall I think is a favorite season. Summers I don't care for. Winters are too cold. Even though I was born in the winter is just too cold. So the fall. No, I'm going to assume that once you got up here, you continued your education. Yes. Yeah. And where did you go to school to continue to pursue a master's or whatever else came after your baccalaureate degree? I went different schools in the area. I went to C.W. Post. I took a course in Hofstra, Long Island University. I went to a number of the local universities or schools. And but I never did complete, let's say, a master's per se. But I did a lot of graduate credits, almost to a master's in special ed. But then once I realized what special ed
really until I didn't want a degree. I didn't want a specialty in special ed, so I didn't finish the master's. But I do plan to, upon retiring, go back to school and finish, what I started, and or take up another interest. That's what I'd like to do.
Great. Wonderful plan.
Right. I do plan to do just that.
Listen, like most of us, you've had a lot of teachers in your life. Are there one or two teachers that you would really, if you could, like to thank today for their efforts on your behalf, or even for their contribution to your life?
You're right. There are so many that I could name. And one in particular, I shouldn't say one, but Mary Baber, who was a business teacher here when I arrived. She had been here, I think she said maybe about 8 or 9 years when I started. And with her, she was so open and friendly, and she was really the first one that I encountered once we were introduced to the department. And she just made things so much better for us by giving us information and showing us what to do, because we'd never been in the classroom other than student teaching. But she was one who helped a great deal. But there were other teachers along the way that I really, and in every instance, I was able to gain something from them. I was here in the Sondling R.O.B.S building the earlier part of my years. And I was in this, when we went on split session, yes. I was with the 10th graders, and there was Mr. Edward R.O.B.S, who meant a great deal to me. His encouragement, because at one time, I didn't want to stay. I had come in contact with so many negatives, in terms of, just things in general with the kids and their lifestyles and the things. I told them I learned more from them about the world than I'd known in all my years of growing up. And I think it was mainly because we were protected a great deal during our childhood years. And my father thought of me as a child even at 22, 24. So it was a lot, at that time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, but one of the things that we learned a lot about as teachers was pain. Watching students and learning.
Exactly.
And that became painful.
That was the thing. This is what I found very hard to adjust to, because there were many times that I would see a child in pain and not be able to do anything about it, wanting to help, but you just couldn't interfere. When I first started here, people really don't realize it, but that was one of the reasons I came locally to go to church. I started attending the churches because that was one way of getting to know the families and knowing the kids that I worked with. And I would know their families and what they were doing. And many times when the parents saw me in the church or in the community, they had a different respect and a different outlook for that child in terms of what he or she was, was doing in the classroom. And I think that was one of the benefits. But there were so many things
that extended your influence as well.
Yes, exactly. Because I can remember there were many times when I walked in or walked up on kids in the corridor with language problems, foul language, and the minute they saw me, they changed the tune because they knew I knew their mom or their dad from the church. So it was a great influence. It made a big difference with the children. But as I said, there were so many. I didn't know at that time what foster care was. I learned all of those things once I was here. And to know of the heartache or the things that the kids were going through as foster children and not be able to do, anything about it. It was very difficult. Yes.
What were some of your least favorite subjects when you were a student?
When I was a student, trying to think.
Was there any subject?
Social studies.
Social studies, okay.
Social studies, trying to remember all of the dates. Right,
yeah.
The dates, I think. Probably the only the year.
Listen, had you heard anything or had you any, I want to say, preconceptions about what it would be like teaching in Brentwood before you came?
Not Brentwood per se, but north.
Uh-huh.
Okay. We were taught, I guess, in high school that all the kids up north are so much smarter than you are. So you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to do great things in order to compete or to go to school or to teach. So when I came here, that was the greatest fear, that I would not measure up, or that they would spot it, right away, that I was not as well traveled as they are, or I couldn't compete with the many other things with their dress. Because when I started teaching here, I owned one dress, 2 skirts, 2 blouses, 1 pair of shoes, and that was it. That was the extent of my wardrobe. And I felt really, that was one of the things, I guess, that caused me to, be reserved. And because I felt that I was really not cut out to be in this part of the world. And why did I come?
A humbling experience.
Very much
Yes.
so.
Yes.
Very much so. Yes.
But you overcame that, all right.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah.
Eventually, I learned that it really was not really the truth. It really
Who
wasn't true.
interviewed you for the job?
I can't remember for the life of me.
Okay.
I cannot remember.
Was it one person?
No, I think there were 2.
Mhm.
I believe there were 2.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, in terms of knowing, I didn't know the people that well. And when I came for the interview, believe it or not, and people don't believe me, I didn't want the job.
Yes.
I didn't want to be in New York. I wanted
Yes,
to go
I can
back
understand that.
to Virginia. And that's why I was so surprised when I got the job.
I think Mr. Weaver would have been principal back then.
I think he was, but only for a short.
69.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I
But
think
for a short while.
for a
as you
short
said.
while. Right.
Who were some of the other principals that you worked
I
under or
remember
with?
Mr. Yankowski.
Mhm.
I remember Mr. Pulio, of course, and from when we went to the split session, Mr. Reese,
Yes.
Mr. Martz.
Yes.
But in working, I really didn't come in contact that much with the administrators, because most of the things that I did, I tried to handle myself. I tried to work with the kids the best I could, and so I didn't send many to the office. Then, so therefore, I didn't have much contact other than seeing them passing the room or walking or for observations. And
Some of the earliest memories you have of 69, 70, 71, during those first non-tenured years were stressful, I'm sure.
Yes.
But were there positive? Were there happy memories of the times with some of the people you worked with?
Yes, they were very stressful. I think because of the 60s movement, the civil rights movement, the kids here were angry, or they wanted to express, the feelings that they had about certain issues. And I noticed
there was the war.
There was the war, right? There were quite a few unsettling moments here in the building. But on the other side, there were quite a few joyous moments. And as a matter of fact, at the retirement dinner, I referred to a number of incidents during that time. My first year, 69, I told them that I was probably the only teacher running after I was hired. I was probably the only teacher running to the front office looking for my letter that told me I couldn't come back at the end of the year. And there were a couple of years like that. I just wanted to be back with my parents. And one student came in and said, it was at the end of the year, my first year here, when I was looking for my letter that said, get out, don't come back. A little girl came in, asked me if she could sit in and do some work. And I said, certainly, come on in. She came in, she sat, and she was working. When she finished, she got up to leave. And she said to me, Miss Boone, she said, I've never had a Black teacher before. And I said, really? And so she said, but I'm glad you came, because now I know I'll never be the same. And I remember that. She said, I'll never be the same again. And so as I told the crowd that I thought, well, maybe that's why I'm here, because I'd always ask, why am I here? Why did I come this far, and why I'm here in Brentwood? And when she said that to me, then I realized, well, maybe that's why I'm here, to be a role model to the Black kid or the Black student. And so that satisfied me for another year. So I said, well, if they have me back next year, I'll stay another year when she, said that to me. But of course, the next year, and I saw the same little girl, and she had changed. She had completely changed. She was, before, she looked as though she had taken a blouse out of the wash and just put it on. But the next year, she was pressed and starched and much, I guess, neater or whatever. And her behavior, she went on to school, I understand, in psychology, but I lost touch with her after, graduation. And then the next year, but that year now, I'm thinking that now I'm here for the Black image. And I told them that when I started, I was a little colored girl, which was true, shy, reserved, backward, as I thought it. And then I guess became a Negro, as they call us. And it was a different type of feeling for me. And then a Black woman, that was an even different, feeling. The Black woman, now we hear of the Black power, and you're going to move into this, you're going to take charge and be in control and be the leader. You're going to do these things. You can't be bothered with anyone else. And then another year, again, looking for this letter, a little boy comes in at the end of the school year, and he says he had to do a report. And I said, well, come on in. He came in and sat, did his report, and as he finished, he got up to leave. Deja vu. Little kid gets to the door. He turns and he says, Miss Boone, I've never had a Black teacher before. Now, and I'm looking because this is a little white kid. And I said, no. And he says, no, I've never had a Black teacher. He said, but I'm glad you were my teacher. And I said, well, thank you, baby. And he left. And then I realized, as I told him, I was not here for any one child. I was here for any child that needed me. And after that, I settled in, and now it's 30 years. And over the years, I've met beautiful kids. I've had a couple of knuckleheads, but the majority of the kids were beautiful kids. And
what were your assignments during all of these years?
Anywhere from business math, introduction to occupation. At that time was general business, mostly keyboarding or typing. And
you've seen an awful lot of changes in the technology from beginning to
from right until now. Today. Right. And I tried to stay away from it as long as I could. But we've come through a lot of things, Yes, so.
Were you involved in any other activities? You mentioned that you were involved in a community and attended church in the community, but were you involved in any student activities here other than the classroom?
I was the advisor for the Future Business Leaders of America. Mm-hmm. And I started that when I was in the 10th grade center. I think it was Northwest Center. So I worked with them until last year when I gave it up. And that was over, I guess, 15, 16 years of working with them. Yeah.
Looking back, did you have a favorite year? Was there one year that was really a good time? Better than the other? Better than
all the other years.
In some respects?
Only one that I can remember where I had a little girl to go as far as the state in FBI. She won first place in Suffolk County, and then she won third place in the state for keyboarding, and she was on the typewriter, and the other kids were on computers. But she did it, she was third in the state, but then something happened and they called and wanted her to represent the state in Washington. But of course, by that time we had spent all of our money and we couldn't go, to Washington. Right. But I think that was a great year because I was so proud of, this little girl.
You think the training that you had prior to your actual work in the classroom prepared you for what you found when you got there? Your student teaching?
My student teaching, yes, in a way. It did some of the training. It prepared me in a little way. But I think much of my training was done on the job. Yes. As I said, on the job training, because all that had gone on before went out the window. I don't remember too much of it. And then you were under the guise of an advisor or the teacher in the classroom. So, and for me, I was fortunate because I went back home to do student teaching. But I think most of my training was really right here in the classroom. Yes, right in the classroom.
Learning on the job.
On the job training.
Yes.
Because every child is different. And every class, I don't care, over the years, every class, I think, was different.
You may already have answered this question, Ann, but I'm going to ask you differently. Your role here certainly had a job description, no matter where or when you worked. But you had a mission that you have been talking around and about. How would you define your mission for all these years?
All these years.
What was your purpose here?
As I said, the first, in talking and hearing this kid say to me that she had never had a Black teacher, I thought that was my mission, to be here for these kids because they did, they needed that model. And when I went to church, as I told the group at my retirement dinner, when I went to church after this child spoke to me, I went to church. I was puzzled because I really wanted to be out of here. I wanted to be back in Virginia. And as I sat there that Sunday, the preacher preached on the Good Shepherd. And he said that Jesus, the shepherd, left the flock, the 99, and went in search of the one, just the one. And his concern was not about the safety of the 99 because they were secure. It was the one child, or the one that was missing, that they went in search of. So at the end of his message was for me, because at the end of his message, he said, if you have helped one child, and I don't know why he said child, but if you have helped one, then you are where you are supposed to be. You are where God wants you to be. And that was what after that, and it comes back to me. It comes back to mind frequently that I am where God wants me to be. And from that, I tried to do the best I could with what, I had.
Now, you mentioned that you have had contact with former students.
Yes.
You mentioned a couple before. Is there anything else that comes to mind in that area that you could tell us about? Contact with former students over the years that you hear from or you bumped into?
Well, one in particular, I did get a letter from a little girl. Well, as a matter of fact, she was not a student, but she was one that a few of the teachers had gotten together to help in college. When she graduated from high school, she wanted to go to college. I think she was accepted at Cornell, but she didn't have funds for housing. So many of the teachers got together and we sent, funds for her. I don't know how many of them received letters, but I received a letter from her. I received an invitation to her graduation. She was a law student. She graduated. I received an invitation to her wedding. But all of these things were done right within a certain period of time. And I was not in town. I was away because it was during the summer. And when I did get the information, it was maybe because I had moved from one address to another. And this information went to the old address and I didn't get it. But I did get a letter and that said she was married. She married she married a lawyer and she's working with a law firm. And that she's doing, quite well, but I haven't heard from her recently. And there was one who's in the Southland somewhere, and so many of them in touch with, and they say they're doing beautifully, and that's it's
a good feeling.
It's a good feeling. It really is. And I said,
you reminded me of something else. The number of teachers who have reached down into their pockets to help less fortunate.
Yes.
And to begin with, we didn't make a great deal of money to begin with.
Exactly.
And yet still curriculum materials.
Right.
And assistance to those in need, whether it's lunch money or tuition money.
Exactly. Right. I guess I could probably retire off the money I've given out over the years. As you say, lunchroom students many times didn't have enough to buy lunch, and you give $1, a penny here or there. And it was true, but it wasn't missed. No. It was not, it really wasn't missed.
And what makes you angry?
When I see waste, I think in any sense of it, the word waste. Children who are gifted but don't use the gift. Food that's thrown away that can be given to someone who might want, could eat it or whatever. Waste, just the word, It really it makes me angry. But there aren't too many other things that do.
Well, perhaps this would be an easier question. And they say it's very important to keep a sense of humor, and you certainly have one. What makes you laugh?
Well, I guess just life itself, really. I enjoy the things I do. I enjoy the kids, and I hope you enjoy me. And I'm sometimes tough with them, but they know it's because it's for their good and not just for the sake of being tough. I like being here. I really didn't want to retire, but it's something that I felt, that I needed to do. I have a mother who's 83, and my husband's siblings are in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, and I wanted to spend some time, with them. And
I want to go back to that, but first I want to address your membership in the BTA. You joined the organization early on as a new teacher.
Right.
Were you ever active in the BTA?
No, not really.
Okay.
And I always believe that you leave those things that people are capable of doing to those people that are, in the position. And but over the years, in talking to other districts or the teachers, I knew friends from other districts, and just listening to them talk about their union, and me talking about ours, we didn't compare. They just didn't compare. BTA, and I said, and it worked well. I don't know if there's another union on Long Island that worked with the administration or with the board as well as ours.
True.
And I think so. Why bother something that was working well? So really, they were doing quite well.
Overall, has your own definition of unionism changed over the years?
No, not really. And that's because life changes. There were many things in the world that changed. And this board and this union seemed to, work well with all of it.
Yeah.
And I said, I know there were times when funds were scarce, but the district held on. Our union held on to what we had and what was given.
Even before we were with NYSET, there was a time that we were just a professional organization,
right,
and eventually became affiliated with the United Teachers. But you're absolutely right what you're saying. Did you have any heroes growing up?
Any heroes? My father, I guess. And I should say my mom too, because my mother was home all the time. But my father was the one who was out and was the breadwinner. And I would say, and I know I'm a little prejudiced here, but my father was probably one of the smartest men, that I knew. I just regret today that I did not listen to much of what he had to say. I remember when I bought my first car, and I called my father and I said, Dad, I'm getting a car. And he says, well, you make sure it's an American car and not a foreign car. And I said, why, Dad? Because most people were buying the Datsuns and the foreign cars. And he said, because when you buy American, also keep a job in America. And then he would say, well, no, don't forget, you have children, coming up, brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews who will need these jobs. And when you start buying outside of the country, you're sending the money outside of the country, and things like that. Yes. But he was so aware. But I think he was a little ahead of his time. But I did, and I stayed with the GM car until last year. And that's because most of the parts now, you don't know where they're coming from.
Yes.
But it was so true. Yes. So my dad was, he could talk on any subject. He read the Bible through and through several times, he said, but you could ask him any topic and he would be able to, give you information.
Were there any of our local leaders that were oh, I won't say heroic, but made impression on you for the quality of their leadership or what they have done for us? I mean, I'm thinking back over the both in terms of department that you've worked in and perhaps for the principals that we've worked with.
I think Mr. Reese and maybe Mr. Galaris. I think those two. I remember Mr. Galaris was in the 10th grade center, right? Yes. And Mr. Reese was the afternoon session where we were on split session.
Were you ever afraid to come to work here?
No. Only one time I was afraid to leave, and that was during when they had the shooting over at 10 East.
Yes.
But I have never, and people have often asked me that same question about being afraid to come to work in Brentwood. And I say the same. I said to them, Brentwood has been good to me, and there has never been a time that I've been afraid to come here. I've always felt secure, within the building with my students.
We've always received a bad rap in the media.
Bad rap, right, exactly. Yeah. In the newspaper, different places, but even with the people in the community. But I have never been afraid to come. And I've never been afraid to stay after or stay late. And I've been here some nights as long as 5 or 6 o'clock, just sitting upstairs doing my work.
Looking back, do you have any regrets?
None. None.
Now, here's one. Which of all of your many accomplishments are you most proud?
Oh, I don't even look at the things that were done as being accomplishments by me.
Okay.
I think I did what I had to do wherever I was, and in whatever situation. I just did what I thought was expected and what was,
Okay.
I hoped I would
It's a
do.
package deal.
It's a package deal. I was here for a reason.
Yes.
And any accomplishment, I think, was due to someone else.
You can't take credit for it.
Right, right, okay. Exactly.
I understand. Now, let's get to the last part.
Okay.
You decided at some point that, and for some reason, that it was time to retire. You've mentioned your mother and you've mentioned family. Talk a little bit about your plans there.
Okay. My husband, who's with me, and again, I met him in Brentwood as well.
Yeah. How did you guys meet? How did you meet?
We were in, I think, 10 Northwest. Well, I met him when I first came to Brentwood, but we were not close. He was working in the district. And I met him again in 10 Northwest when we were in the Northwest Center. I was going to Virginia, and I found out he was from Virginia, from Richmond, and he asked for a ride. And I said, okay, I'll give you. He said, I'll pay all of the expenses. I said, no, that's not necessary. I'm going to Norfolk or Suffolk, and I'll drop you off in Richmond. So when we arrived in Richmond, I dropped him off and I went on. He said, well, let me pay for the extra for the rest of the trip. I said, no, that's not fair. You're leaving here. He says, well, I'm not getting out of the car unless you have promised to have dinner with me when I return. And I did. I said, well, okay, I'll promise I'll have dinner. But I knew that when I left, I was not going to have dinner. But when I did come back, I did have dinner, and I found him to be the sweetest, gentlest man that I knew. And after that, we started seeing each other. And from the outside, it was, he appeared to be rough and rugged and I guess insensitive to my feelings or whatever. But it wasn't that way. He was a very gentle man. And we married maybe 8-9 years later, and we've been together. But in terms of retiring, one of the main reasons that I wanted to retire was because of my husband, because he has a visual impairment. He's visually impaired. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to travel or take some time with him, try and locate someone, a doctor maybe who could help him. Or, I just wanted him to be able to go and see as much as he can while he can, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. Mm-hmm. Right. So we did go to Switzerland just before, last year was over. So that was one area you got to see. We went to New Orleans, and we've just been, we decided we'd go locally or statewide just to see. But that's one of my main reasons, right? I needed the time for him.
You officially retired this year.
This year.
What was the actual date of your official leaving?
I guess July 1st.
Okay.
Right.
1999.
1999 was.
And you sound like you have a definite plan.
Oh, I do. I do have a definite plan.
Tell us what some of your thoughts are, in addition to doing what you've just mentioned. What else?
Well, I had greater plans before I adopted 2 little girls.
Okay.
So now with
the plan
has been altered, right, ever so slightly. I promised them that, I should say we promised them, my husband and I, that we would be here until they finished college. So one is in Binghamton. She wants to be a medical doctor.
Wonderful.
So she's in pre-med, which means another 6 or 7 years. And the other one is in English education. So she has, she'll be coming out. But we'll wait until, we're here until they go back to school in September. Then we'll visit my people or my mother for a couple of weeks or so. And then my husband's people for a couple of weeks. And then I told them whenever they wanted to come home for vacation, we'll come back to, Long Island, and then we'll leave again. But my greatest, my greatest ambition is to get to Jerusalem. I want to go to the Holy Land. And so we plan to, hopefully in the year 2000 or 2001, to go there. And that is right now the greatest plan we have.
You remember what you earned your first year in Brentwood?
Yes, I do. Compared to the last year, I think it was $7,300 my first year in Brentwood. And for me, that was a huge sum of money, especially when you came from background, where there was very little. But that was
what was your favorite time of year, Ann, and while you were in the classroom, if you had a favorite time?
I think Christmas. Christmas was the favorite time because the kids got involved in the Christmas cards, the spirit of Christmas. It was very, very high.
And I guess the least favorite time would have been grades on the end of the school year.
Marking periods. Yes, I would think.
Given the chance, with what you've learned in the last, how many, has it been 30 years?
30 years, right, 30 years.
What, if anything, would you do differently?
I asked myself that a couple of days ago, and I was my husband and I were out, and we were talking about investments. And I said, if I knew back then what I know now, I would be wealthy. And that youth is truly wasted on the young, right? Looking at the young people today, I said, if we knew then, things would be much better. But as far as my profession, I don't think I could have done better than I did.
Because you are where you're supposed to be?
Where I'm supposed to be, exactly. That is how I feel. I am where I'm supposed to be, and that's it.
The Bible has been an important source of reading for you, obviously. Yes. Is there another book that has had a profound effect upon your life? I mean, here we are teachers. We influence students all the time in their reading and their choice of books. I wondered what teachers read. I wondered what you read.
Oh, I usually my books are mostly inspirational books, and I really can't give you any one topic, one book that I've read.
That's the category.
But that's usually the category that I enjoy. The latest book I was reading is a book called The Color of Water. And I'm reading that, as
Have
we
you
speak.
read any of Oprah's recommendations?
I read her book, 1 or 2 books. What was the last one? I can't even think of the name of it. But I did read a couple of her books. And much of what she spoke of was like living life again. In other words, it was like being home again. I could have probably written the same book. And so there are a number of books, as I said, that are inspirational, that, you know, in other words, the life that she led, I could tell of people who did the same thing,
Yes.
or living much of it myself, I knew, yeah. And the book I'm reading now, The Color of Water, is, again, life as I know it in Virginia, you know, and even now going back and seeing much of what was going on.
What are you going to miss, Ann?
What am I going to miss here? I think the kids, you know, I miss the kids. Although I see them in the stores around, and I often tell them, you know, during the class, I see them in the different areas, and that I shop locally, and I try to encourage them to do the same thing. I shop locally because these are the merchants that are hiring our children. And so when I'm out shopping, I see them, and I shop because, you know, of their positions there, but I don't shop because I want them to give me these breaks.
Yes.
So many times I've gone into stores, and when I get home, I find extra food, and I tell them I don't need extra food, you know, but they feel that close, and because they see me, you know, they recognize me. But I do that to encourage them to do the same, you know, to leave your money in your community, or put as much in the community as you can.
Now, there are things that I'm sure you're not going to miss.
Oh, I'm sure. Grading, you know, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get here by 7. No, that I won't miss. But the kids, you know, and I guess, but once I'm here, it's like home. You know, once I'm in the building or with the teachers, it's much like being a part of a family. And I really mean, truly, a sense of family. I've had friends over the years. I've lost a couple of friends that were dear to me. I don't know if you remember Jean Lally and May Muller.
Very well.
I knew them quite well, and I truly missed them because they were very close to me. And such inspiration that I got from both of them, such determination, you know, those kinds of things, I will probably miss more.
Is there something that you would like to have accomplished, Ann, that you either didn't have time to do, or you couldn't see it in the time that you had?
Well, I think in any situation, or in every situation, there are always things that you could do, and you always look back to say, well, I could have done that better. You know, I could have been this, or I could have, you know, I could have gone on to school. I could have finished what I started. I could have become this. I could have become that. I could have helped more. I could have, I thought of children, you know, having my own, or being around, you know, more. There are so many things. But then again, I look at the phrase, you are where God wants you to be, and you're doing what He wants you to do. And I said,
don't worry about the rest.
And I don't worry about what I didn't do, because it can't be done now, you know, especially in this setting, because we're through.
What advice might you offer to the beginning teachers who are following in your and my footsteps?
Well, I would say, as I spoke with the colleagues at the retirement dinner, the greatest advice I could give the young people is to look at the student from the inside out and not from the outside in. When I first started here, I made that mistake once. There was a young man who was in my homeroom, and he was late to homeroom every day. And I looked at this kid with the chains hanging from his belt to his pocket. He had tattoos on each shoulder, short jacket, leather jacket, black helmet. He was just clad in all black boots, whatever. And I looked at this kid, and I was petrified. I was scared of this little boy, but he was a big kid, you know, long red hair, red mustache, you know, the hair all over his face, beard or whatever. Mm. And this kid was late to my homeroom every single day. And I said, now, if they think I'm going to talk to this kid or make this kid be on time, forget it. I'm not saying anything. But eventually, he caused other kids to hang back or be late to homeroom also. And I said, well, I can't do this because then the principal is going to be on me. So I have to say something to this kid. And when I did, this child was the most humble child that I could have ever met. And I jumped on him and I said, why are you late to my homeroom? You're supposed to be on time. And he said to me, I'm sorry, Miss Boone. I'll try to do better, but I work all night because my family, my father's ill or my mother doesn't have the income, and I'm trying to help out at home. And I felt so small at that point in time. And I swore from that time on, I would never look at a kid from the outside and judge what he or she will or won't do. And I've lived by that. So I don't care if they come with their pants hanging off or whatever. You know, I try to look at the kid from the inside because I know this child is merely doing what his environment tells him to do, to be like the other kids. If they have the pants off, the shoes untied, then you have to fit in. You have to do that too. But as a teacher and as a young teacher, you can't fall into that. You know, look at that kid. He doesn't belong. They all belong.
Valuable advice. And they all fit in someplace.
They all fit in someplace. Maybe not to our mold, but someplace.
What's your least favorite thing to do?
Cook.
And what is your favorite word?
My favorite word would be, it's so funny because I was just telling my husband, we were just talking recently, and now I can't even think of it. But my favorite thing, and we walk every morning, my husband and I, and we talk. And I just said to him this morning, if I had the body of the young person, you know, and they had my mind, or I had my mind and the body, that life would be so much better. And I would say determination would probably be my most favorite word. Yeah. I am determined to do some of the things, you know, that I want to do, and wish I had it earlier.
Well, I wish you every good luck in all the things. You have a full plate of plans.
Yes.
And I certainly hope I know you're determined. I hope you're successful in accomplishing all the things you want to do, Anne, and that 5 years from now, if we are able to do this again, you will have a whole host of new things to tell me about.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been beautiful. Thank you.